Dre Spector Boxing here with another video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, show your boy some love. Dre Spector Boxing here with another one. What up, fight fans? What up, fight fans, man? I hope y'all enjoyed the weekend as much as I enjoyed it, man. Man, oh man, oh man. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. This is easy, man. It was an easy fight to predict. The only thing I got wrong over the entire weekend was 8-round TKO. The rest was on point. I told you it was a one-sided victory. I told you Errol Spence had it heads and heels over, the ability and skills. So the hand speed, man, you go back and look at that fight. Who had the better hand speed? It was Errol Spence. He was very sharp, very quick on the release. That hand speed was superior to Mikey Garcia, who was just waiting on timing. Like I told you, he only had impeccable timing, and with the jab interrupting that timing, he never was able to really counter and time Errol like he wanted to. Also, the control of range, man, that played the most key. Man, this guy Errol didn't even take the normal chances and risks that he did. He showed that he can play defensive, play in a defensive standpoint to where, it made it impossible for Mikey to even land shots on him. The guy was never in range for him to hit. He always stayed on his toes. He always was pivoting away from the ropes. Man, this was a boxing clinic, man. It was a landslide victory. They didn't give Mikey one round. They gave Mikey, one of the judges gave Mikey a 10-8, Errol a 10-8 round over Mikey because of how dominant he was in the round. I don't know which round it was, but I was just looking at the final score totals when he gave him 120 to 107. I didn't give Mikey a round. The closest I think I did give Mikey in the fight was round 2. Mikey landed a few body shots. He came over the top with something. But I think Errol controlled the round with the jab. Also stayed at the distance. Continued to just pot shot him early on in the round. And then as Mikey started to tire down, as he always does, Errol unleashed on his ass, and I'm talking about unleashed in dramatic fashion. That's why around, I think it was 9, 10, 11, they were really looking at Mikey, and trying to thinking about stopping the fight. And I thought that's another thing I told you. Robert Garcia, as long as Mikey wasn't knocked down or hurt bad, Robert Garcia wasn't going to stop the fight unless it was an accumulation of punches in which he understood would be, detrimental to his health. So the only way that we were going to get this fight stopped is if Errol would have wobbled or really hurt Mikey and jumped on him to the point where the ref would have stopped. The ref was really looking at, I think, around 10. He was really looking at stopping the fight early in round 10 when Errol jumped on him. But after that, I think the ref kind of seen that he had enough in him to finish the fight, and he allowed him to go out on the shield. I still think that the corner should have probably stopped the fight, but that's neither here nor there. It was a landslide victory. People are asking, well, why didn't Errol knock out Mikey? For one thing, Errol fought from the outside very early on. He didn't accumulate a lot of punches until the mid to late rounds. And that's when he really upped his punch output because he started taking more chances, seeing that Mikey had them wore down. That was the easiest thing to do. And by that time, I don't think Mikey had took enough damage in the early rounds as Errol's normal opponents did. So he was able to withstand and last throughout the fight. Also, if y'all look at the early rounds, Mikey blocked a lot of punches. So we can say that he didn't have a lot of punch output. He focused on defense. Mikey blocked a lot of punches. To the regular audience, it looks like Errol's punches are getting through in a lot of those early rounds, right? It looks like, oh, he's getting around. Mikey was partially blocking a lot of those punches. So Errol was very dominant and very accurate, but Mikey was focusing on defense. So he was either he was slipping the punches or he was blocking the punches, but he wasn't on offense really much because he was focused on trying to figure out a way to time Errol and get inside of Errol's jab. It never happened, you know. So this fight was a really good fight, man. I liked everything about it, but it showed you Errol is a more superior boxer. The boxing IQ, he knew exactly what he needed to do. He showed exactly what he needed to do. Mikey had no answers on the other side. Man, it wasn't even close. And I tried to tell y'all, man, this is going to be a one-sided victory. And everybody's, oh, nah, Mikey's going to do this, and it's going to be competitive. And then it's a 50-50, my ass. I don't know what the hell y'all was looking at. I don't know what track record would make you think that Mikey had enough competition and sound wins over the competition to think that he could withstand an Errol Spence who's at the top of the game at 147 pounds. This is a different division. This is a division in which these guys are at an elite level. So they've switched from Mikey Garcia, you know, and some of these fanboys now they're going to be jumping on the Terence Crawford bandwagon, which that was expected because they were on that before Mikey Garcia name was even mentioned. And they were saying that Errol is ducking Terence Crawford. Man, they could be further away from the truth. I'm gonna break that down in just a second. Let me get back to Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia was a game opponent. He just couldn't do it tonight. Mikey Garcia served his purpose, came up there, was a sacrificial lamb for Errol Spence, like I told you, so he can build his brand and name and become a superstar. That's what the PBC, that's what Al Heyman is trying to do, make Errol Spence a pay-per-view star that makes a lot more money for them. The next fight, of course, and you've seen it, Manny Pacquiao easily got in that ring, and I didn't know that he was going to do this unless Mikey won. I thought that maybe he was there to see if Mikey was going to win and try to get an easier fight with Mikey. But he got in the fight. He said he would agree to fight. And he also alluded to, you know, he would like to be back here soon, meaning back at AT&T Stadium. He would want to fight in Dallas again versus Errol Spence. I believe that's what's being built. Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao in Dallas Stadium later this year, where in the AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World. Everybody will want to fight there, man. It's a big stage, man. The camera angles, I've never seen a camera angle that comes from the ground and look up. Those are the football camera angles, and I really like that. That was the Fox. That's a Fox HD, you know what I mean, angle, and I really like that aspect, man. We was looking at it at the bar and we're like, damn, I never seen nothing like that, man. I thought somebody was taking like photos of with their camera phone from the ground or some shit. But that was pretty cool, man. It was a cool angle, man. Mikey, big shout out to Robert Garcia, Mikey Garcia, for even taking the fight, man, and for Robert to even know that, hey, look, Mikey had to do something for him to save his brother and keep him in that fight. He was taking a lot of punishment and getting hurt once he couldn't defend himself anymore. And I think that Robert recognized that, but he also knew that it would be some type of thing to hang his hat on, not to stop Mikey, not to mentally stop him, let Mikey go out on the shield. And, you know, he did. He stood up to Errol for 12 rounds. I told you, I don't see anybody standing up to Errol for 12 rounds, but if they did, I don't know how they would be. They say that Mikey didn't go to the hospital, that he was okay, that he made it through the fight without severe injuries. But mentally and physically, I know Errol Spence, you know, imposed his dominance over Mikey Garcia. Now, let's move on. Again, I touched on the Manny Pacquiao situation. That fight is going to pretty much happen fall this year. I'm looking at August, September, October. Somewhere up in there, they're going to be building to make that fight happen. And that's going to be a mega event. It's going to make more money than Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence. It's going to be even a more spectacular fight than Mikey Garcia, because I believe it'll be more competitive. I think Manny Pacquiao uses angles a little bit better, can step around a lot better. He will use quickness like he told Mikey to do. Focus on quickness, being the smaller man. I believe he will use more quickness and give Errol a little bit more to think about. I still think Errol wins that in dominant fashion. I just believe that Manny Pacquiao will give him something earlier when he's fresh. He's going to give him a lot more things earlier to think about. And you see, man, they met in the middle of the ring, and they pretty much knew before this, you know, once he won, that was going to be the next fight. That's going to be a mega fight. Like Earl say, he's going to hand Manny Pacquiao his retirement check. That's what he wants to do. He want to hand Manny Pacquiao his retirement check, man. This guy's talking, you know, he's riding his high horse right now. You know, he has the same amount of confidence that Mikey had when Mikey started calling out Errol Spence. But this, I believe, at 147, anybody that Errol Spence faces, he can pretty much back that up. Now, I'm going to jump over from Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao. I'll talk about that in the days to come. Let's talk about a little bit about Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. And everybody's like, well, why is Errol Spence calling out Terence Crawford? Why is he calling out over the hill Manny Pacquiao? Manny Pacquiao, who's almost to retirement. And the big fight that they want to see is Terence Crawford. Well, let me tell you something. Terence Crawford made his bed. He has a lie in it. He signed with Top Rank again, signed with ESPN. He has a contractual obligation, which makes that fight harder to happen. The other thing I want to point out is when Terence Crawford was entering into the 147-pound division, right? Who was Terence Crawford calling out? They mentioned Errol Spence's name several times to Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford never was saying Errol Spence, and don't lie and say that he was. He was never saying he wanted to fight Errol Spence. He was saying, I want to fight Keith Thurman. I want to move up and fight Keith Thurman. He continuously said this. Keith Thurman was on injury at the time, but he was coming off of injury, and he kept on saying, I want to fight Keith Thurman. They was like, what about Errol Spence? And he was like, well, you know, eventually I'm going to, you know, I want to fight the best. And right now I believe the best is Keith Thurman. The best is Keith Thurman. He kept saying the best was Keith Thurman, right? This is Terence Crawford words. This is not my words in Terence Crawford's mouth. This was what he was getting on ESPN in the interviews and saying that he wanted to fight Keith Thurman, all right? When Keith Thurman wasn't available, he just said he wanted to move up and he wanted to become champion, meaning he wanted to fight Jeff Horn. That's who he wanted to fight, and that's what his camp thought he should do. So he moved up and he fought Jeff Horn. When they started asking, when they was asking Errol Spence about Terence Crawford, they would ask him, did he want to fight Terence Crawford? And he was like, I'll fight, you know, I'm gonna unify at the 147-pound division. If he comes up here, then that's something we can talk about. That's something that may happen. But right now, I'm interested in my division. So he had a plan on fighting the guys in his division to unify the championship. Specifically, it was Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman, because they were the two other champions, and Jeff Horn at that time, the two other champions at his division. Well, what happened was Terence Crawford moved up. They were still asking Terence Crawford about Errol Spence, but you know, basically he was saying no, he wanted to fight Jeff Horn, become champion, you know, this, that, and the third, right? And then they started asking Errol Spence, so who do you want to fight? And Errol Spence was saying, well, since Keith Thurman is injured, you know, he would like the winner of, I think it was like that they stripped the title. He would want either Jeff Horn, or he wanted no, not Jeff Horn. He wanted the winner of whoever would win the fight with Danny Garcia versus Sean Porter, and he had to take his mandatory, right? So he had to fight his mandatory. Is his mandatory? He had to fight him, right? So then the next fight he was trying to get was the Sean Porter versus Danny Garcia winner. And when they had their fight, you remember Earl got in the ring afterwards and said he would like that fight. Well, this was pre Manny Pacquiao signing to PBC. So that fight was never on the table. He never seen that. That's a money fight. Like he said, just over the past weekend, Sean Porter couldn't even sell out his fight with Ugas. It was very empty up in the stadium. He said Sean Porter couldn't sell out a plate dinner or some shit like that, he said. But basically, he's saying Sean Porter doesn't have the fan base to sell on that top level and make big fights. If it was going to be a big fight between him and Sean Porter, it'd be him bringing the fans, and basically that's pretty much it. You know, so he wants the money fights, you know what I mean, right now. And you have to capitalize when that window is open. Manny Pacquiao signed like a 2-fight deal with PBC. First fight being Adrian Broner. Second fight was gonna be either, they were luring him in with the Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is not coming out of retirement. He's happy collecting his exhibition checks in retirement. So the next thing you're gonna see is a Manny Pacquiao fight, the next big money fight. By Errol Spence taking on Mikey Garcia and creating a name for himself, he becomes that next big money fight for Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is gonna take a risk in a fight. He's going to take a risk for the money at this point in his career. There's no reason for him to take a risk and not be collecting on the funds. So in this next fight, it's going to be Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence was asked and posed a question about Terence Crawford during these times. And he said, I want to clean up my side of the street, meaning the PBC fighters. He has several fights available. The reason now that Terence Crawford has changed his tune is because he's heard when Errol Spence mentioned it in that light. Oh, I want to clean up my side of the table. So he understands business-wise, Errol Spence is going to fight the guys on his side. So now he can look like, oh, I'm not scared of Errol Spence. I want to fight him too. But now that he has all these people lined up to fight, and then you sit up there on the other side and say, oh, I'm not scared of Errol Spence. I'll fight him too. Now it looks really good, and it's a really good time for you to say something like that. But why weren't you speaking that tune when you were coming into the 147-pound division? Oh, I want to fight the best. The best is Keith Thurman. So the best is no longer Keith Thurman. It's now Errol Spence, right? But why the best always had been Errol Spence? Because Keith Thurman was inactive then. Keith Thurman was on injury then. The best in the welterweight division at that time was Errol Spence. And you never did mention those names. The next name on your list, I believe you mentioned, was Danny Garcia, but you never mentioned you didn't mention Sean Porter, you didn't mention Errol Spence. You only mentioned really Keith Thurman, and I believe you mentioned Danny Garcia once, or a few times maybe. So all this notion that Terence Crawford is the real boogeyman of 147. Terence Crawford haven't even fought a true 147-pound fighter since he's been at 147. All right, he fought Jeff Horn, but Jeff Horn has a resume of about 15 people maybe. He's a bigger welterweight, but he has 15 fights on his resume, or 16 fights, some shit like that. A very low number of fights to be a champion. And the one win that he had to become champion was a controversial win over Manny Pacquiao, which I thought Manny Pacquiao won that fight easily, but he roughed up Manny Pacquiao, made it look dirty, monkey, and ugly, and was awarded the win. So Terence Crawford, miss me with that BS, Terence. You're not the boogeyman of the 147 division until you fight some other 147 pounders. Don't sit up here and start getting big nuts saying that you want to fight Errol Spence when you weren't saying that when you were entering 147 pounds. You were the one that was saying that you wanted to fight Keith Thurman, and then you waited till Errol Spence say he wanted to fight and clean up his side of the street. Then you start saying, oh yeah, I want to fight Errol Spence too. And let me tell y'all something that y'all may not realize. Terence Crawford has been fighting a lot longer than Errol Spence, right? And Terence Crawford came from, let me give you a backstory. Terence Crawford came from 135 pounds. That's where he turned pro at, right? And he fought a bunch of bums at 135. You could go down and look at his box rec, look at the names on that list, and you're not gonna see anybody of note. You're not gonna know anybody of note. The first person you probably know of note, after he won his championship, he defended his 135-pound championship versus Gamboa. That's going to be the first name you probably know of note on that fucking list. And Gamboa gave his ass problems and rocked his ass at 135 pounds. And Gamboa was coming up from weight from, I think, 126 maybe, or 28 or some shit like that he was fighting at. Can't remember. But Gamboa was coming up 2 weight classes to come and fight Terence Crawford. So y'all can miss me with that BS, that the notion that Terence Crawford is going to be beating someone, or that Terence Crawford is a true man. I heard a guy say, the IBFP say, Terence Crawford is a true welterweight, and that's really Errol Spence is gonna be who Errol Spence should fight, because he's really a true welterweight. Terence Crawford is a fucking 135-pound fighter who came up in weight gradually. He's at 31 years of age, gonna be aging out in a few years. He's not at the top of his game. His prime is behind him. It's Errol Spence prime time. You know what I mean? And they say, well, Terence Crawford is gonna be Errol Spence's biggest. Man, you cannot tell me on paper, maybe, yeah. But he's past his prime. He needs that fight as soon as he can because he's not going to be getting any better as time goes on. If you wait another year or so, then that's not going to look, I mean, that's not going to be in Terence Crawford's best interest to sit up there and be trying to fight Errol Spence, you know, when he's 33. You know what I mean? Like in 2020, 2021. So he doesn't have the time to be sitting there waiting for Errol to clean out the division. Who does have the time is Errol. Errol has nothing but time. He is just reaching his peak. He's reaching his superstardom. And you see how he came. He took this fight very serious, came in tip-top shape. He alluded to that. The next opponent that he has is going to have a lot of problems because he's not going to get out of shape again. He's going to stay around 160 pounds, meaning like he's not going to have so much work to do to come down in weight and make a fight at 147. He's going to be in tip-top shape, ready for the next opponent, which will be a Manny Pacquiao. Terence Crawford, that Bob Arum ship is smoke and mirrors. They don't really want to fight Errol Spence. They want to sound like they want to fight so that they can say that Errol Spence is not trying to fight them, and that allows them to find secondary opponents with weaker resumes that they can fight and say that, oh, we only fighting them because Errol Spence doesn't want to fight us, which is another lie, man. But I'll let them spew all that shit out, man. I'll keep on making videos on this stuff, man, and give y'all the real. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to sit up here and give y'all none of that fake shit some of these other channels are giving y'all. I'm giving y'all the real every time that I come over here and speak these facts, man. This Dre Spector Boxing, that's all I got for right now. Man, I hope everybody enjoyed the weekend, man. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Please hit the subscribe button, man. Show your boy some love. Also hit that bell notification. That way you can stay updated on the latest content as I put it on the channel, man. I told y'all what was going to happen. Everything I said happened. Hey, that's it, man. That should be reason enough to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's Dre Spector, and I'm out.